Chapter 291. Well done. Well done, indeed. Edwin laughed boisterously. This substratumus may be expensive, but it's definitely worth the price. While he was still chortling away, another bodyguard rushed into the room anxiously. Sir, something bad happened back home. The guard fell to his knees, weeping. What? Edwin frowned. We just received news from Swinton that Hummer Villa turned into a slaughterhouse last night. All of our fighters are dead, and Ms. Hummer and Mr. Hummer were both killed as well. The Hummer family is gone. These words struck Edwin like lightning, and the substratumus in his hand crashed to the floor, shattering instantly. Son! Edwin wailed mournfully, collapsing to the floor. The devastated man stayed on the floor for what felt like ages. When he finally staggered to his feet, he seemed to have aged 10 years, looking extremely haggard. Get ready. I want to head to Boulderthorn's branch right this instant. Edwin seethed menacingly. He no longer had anything to fear now that his children were dead. He only cared about avenging them, no matter the cost. After an hour, in Boulderthorn's branch's meeting room. What? Joshua was killed. A man in a green shirt shot up and roared. Who the hell dares to touch someone from Boulderthorn? It was Natasha Harmon and a man called Dustin Rhys. Edwin growled. The other man humphed. How dare a family like them challenge us? They must have a death wish. Gather up our men. No matter what, we must avenge Joshua. Yes, sir. The Boulderthorn disciples immediately left to carry out the man's orders. Soon, the entire branch began to make a move. Boulderthorn had hundreds of thousands of disciples throughout Balerno, and this particular branch has fostered the highest quantity of skilled martial artists. The reason for that was simple: their mentor was the guildmaster of Boulderthorn. Boulderthorn has 4 branch leaders, 8 guildmasters, and 36 second-in-commands. Besides the branch leaders, the guildmasters held the most power in the guild. With just one command, guildmasters could control thousands of disciples. However, each guildmaster had strong animosity against the other, so they were extremely protective of the disciples. So, whenever someone was in trouble, everyone would immediately chip in to help. And out of all Boulderthorn disciples, Joshua was the most talented and skilled, earning him the head guildmaster's affection. His sudden death shocked the entire guild, and if Boulderthorn didn't avenge him, their reputation would be sullied, particularly for this branch. Edwin felt some sense of relief when he saw the effort the guild disciples were putting in. Without saying another word, he got back to his car and headed towards the Grants' home. No matter who was responsible for Jade's disappearance, he was sure to place the blame on Dustin, and, knowing the Grants, Dustin wasn't going to get away with this easily. With Boulderthorn and the Grants working together, even the Harmon family, one of the wealthiest families around, wouldn't last long, and when the time came, the Harmon family would surely make Natasha take responsibility alone. As for Dustin, he was nothing but a sitting duck for the Boulderthorn disciples. My dear son, I will avenge you soon, Edwin swore solemnly. Chapter 292. Meanwhile, in Park Place, Swiston. What? Joshua Hummer is dead, and his entire family was massacred. They even burned Hummer Villa down to the ground. Jessica, who had been relaxing a second ago, sobered when she heard her guard's report. The Hummer family was well known for being the top family in Swinton. While it couldn't win against the Harmon family, it was still a force to be reckoned with, especially with Boulderthorn's support. So who could be powerful enough to destroy that family? Do you know who did it? Jessica pushed. The fire burned almost everything. It'll be difficult to trace the source. The guard shook his head. We'll be in trouble if we can't find the culprit. Jessica frowned, pondering. Under normal circumstances, she'd be over the moon to learn that the Hummer family was gone. However, most people now knew that the Hummer family and her daughter had something against each other, so Natasha would naturally become the prime suspect. What Jessica feared the most was that should Boulderthorn start digging into this matter, things would get much more complicated. What's wrong? Just then, Natasha walked into the room wearing silk pajamas. Joshua Hummer is dead, and the entire Hummer family was destroyed while Edwin Hummer is still missing. Jessica summarized everything she knew. I already knew that. Nothing to be surprised of. Natasha stretched lazily. Huh. When did you find out? Jessica asked, astonished. Dustin called me last night, Natasha responded calmly. Last night. Jessica froze before understanding dawned. Are you saying that he's the one who did it? Yep. Natasha nodded. Is he crazy? How could he kill Joshua Hummer? Doesn't he know that Joshua's mentor is Clement Lincoln? Isn't he worried that Boulderthorn would retaliate? Jessica snapped. The Hummer family and I are already enemies, so I don't think Dustin did anything wrong. Natasha countered. The truth was she'd already been prepared to fight against them after hearing that the military had arrested Dustin. Still, it was a good thing he returned safely. He did nothing wrong. Jessica frowned. Natasha, do you have any idea what you're saying? Even your father has to be careful around Lincoln. Dustin won't be the only one to die if Lincoln wants revenge. You'll be dragged down too. Boulderthorn was one of the strongest guilds in Belerno. The Harmon family wouldn't be able to stand up against them, much less the guildmaster, who had the power to control over 10,000 men. To put things into perspective, without military aid, no one would be able to stop those martial artists. Boulderthorn may be powerful, but they are not above the law. They won't be able to do as they please. Besides, did you really think that the Hummer family was going to simply let us go if Dustin hadn't killed Joshua? Since nothing can stop us from being enemies, the next best option would be to make the first move. Natasha explained calmly, having thought about it earlier. I don't care. Dustin is in big trouble this time. If you don't want to drag our family into this mess, you better cut all ties with him right now. Jessica warned. That's your plan. Cutting ties with him. Natasha snorted. You shouldn't forget that Dustin offended the Hummer family for me. Are you telling me to turn my back on him right now? Why not? Jessica responded scornfully. Everyone has their value. Once they're no longer of use, they should be discarded. You should always focus on the bigger picture. How could you say something like that? You haven't changed, have you? You're still so disgusting. Natasha sneered before spinning around to leave. You. Jessica fumed. Chapter 293. Was it wrong for a mother to worry about her daughter's safety? So why couldn't Natasha understand her? Istrad. Jessica called out. A voluptuous woman immediately hurried into the room. Yes, madam. Send an anonymous letter to Clement Lincoln to let him know everything Dustin has done. Jessica instructed. Huh. Isfrid was stunned. Are you sure, madam? Dustin had been severely injured just to save Natasha, yet Jessica was telling her to betray him. That was crossing the line. Shut up and do as I say. Natasha will only be safe if we sacrifice Dustin. Hurry up. Jessica ordered coldly. Yes, madam. Istrad could only nod. Although she felt sorry for Dustin, as the Harmon family's shadow guard, she had no choice but to obey Jessica. Meanwhile, a red BMW suddenly pulled up at the door of Peaceful Medical Center. The car door flung open, and Dakota Nicholson rushed into the building frenziedly. I know you're here, Rhys. Come out. She yelled. Which uneducated brat is it? Dustin emerged from the kitchen. He looked up and gave her a knowing look. So it's you. What can I do for you? Cut the crap. My mother's sick. Follow me to the hospital and help her. Dakota ordered rudely. She woke up this morning to find that her mother was paralyzed, unable to feel anything below her shoulders, and could only move her neck. Although Dakota was shocked, she was forced to admit that everything happened just as Dustin had said it would. Her mother had fainted the first day, coughed up blood on the second, and became paralyzed on the third, just like he said. So, if her mother couldn't receive treatment in time, she would die tomorrow. What does your mother falling sick have to do with me? Dustin shrugged, not at all surprised. She wouldn't be sick if you hadn't slapped her, Dakota replied arrogantly. Wow. To become terminally ill from a slap. Your mother sure is something else. Dustin chuckled, shaking his head. Stop messing around. I'm giving you a chance to redeem yourself. Come with me to the hospital to save my mother right now. Dakota ordered. Sorry, but I don't give a damn. Dustin refused bluntly. What? Dakota frowned. How dare you refuse? Do you have any idea what the consequences will be? Nope. Dustin shook his head. Dakota humped, displeased. That means you'll offend the Glenstead Nicholsons. If I can pull you out of jail, I can certainly put you back in. It sounds like I have you to thank for my freedom. Dustin asked, amused. Do you think I would have saved you if Dahlia didn't keep begging me? Dakota humphed. You should be grateful. Since I saved you, it's time for you to repay the favor. I'm giving you a chance to save my mother. I have no idea where you found the confidence to say all that. Dustin snorted and shook his head. If that's the attitude you're going to carry, I'm afraid I can't help you. Please leave. Dakota was supposed to ask for a favor, yet she acted arrogantly. It was as if she expected him to be grateful. That she was telling him to save someone. Who did she think she was? Chapter 294. You shameless bastard. Dustin's repeated refusal angered Dakota, the proud daughter of a wealthy family. Usually, people would be tripping over their feet trying to flatter her, yet here Dustin was, ignoring her. Who's the shameless one? Dustin raised an eyebrow. Have you been eating so much junk food that you fried your brain? This is Belerno, not Glenstead, so don't give me that attitude. You. Dakota was so angry she gritted her teeth, but she couldn't do anything else since she desperately needed him to save her mother. She would have already struck him if her mother's life wasn't at stake. What do you want, Rhys? Dakota took a deep breath, trying to keep her anger at bay. I won't make things difficult for you, for Dahlia's sake, Dustin answered. I can save her, but first, I want you to stop that haughty attitude of yours and give me a sincere apology. Next, I want you to write a letter of apology. Never. Dakota balked. How could I, the daughter of the Glenstead Nicholsons, apologize to someone like you? Absolutely not. Then forget about it. I'm not the one suffering anyway. Dustin responded lazily. But don't say I didn't warn you. Your mother will die tomorrow if she doesn't receive treatment in time. You. Dakota choked, her face dark. Although she didn't like hearing that, it was still the truth. If her mother didn't receive help in time, she would be dead by the next morning. Please leave if you aren't happy with my conditions. Dustin waved her away. I'll do it. Dakota eventually gave in. Biting her lip, she stammered. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Are you talking to the air? Speak up. Dustin ordered. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Dakota shouted, her face red. That was her first time apologizing to someone, and it was utterly humiliating. Fine. I'll forgive you because of Dahlia, but you better remember not to be so arrogant from now on. Not everyone is as kind as me, Dustin reminded her. Dakota's face darkened, and her palms ached from how hard she clenched her fists. She forced out a smile and asked, You'll save my mom now, right? What about the apology letter? Dustin asked instead. I'll write it. Dakota gritted her teeth and began writing as soon as she got some pen and paper. Soon, a long letter was completed. As expected of an aristocratic family's lady. Your writing is perfect. Dustin nodded, pleased. He stored the letter away and pulled out a bottle of pills. Here. 1 pill a day, and she'll be as good as new after a month. Just this. Are you serious? Dakota accepted the bottle and studied it suspiciously. Are you messing with me, Rhys? My mom can be saved with just a few pills. What else were you expecting? Was I supposed to open her up instead? Dustin questioned back. All right. I'll believe you this once. Your medicine better work, or I'm coming for you. Giving Dustin a vicious glare, Dakota turned to leave. Chapter 295. Hold on. What now? Dakota halted and spun around, impatient. You haven't paid yet. This medicine is precious. You can just pay me 10 million, Dustin casually told her. What? A bottle like this costs $10 million. You might as well rob a bank. Dakota fumed. This is obviously easier than robbing a bank. You can always give it back if you find it too expensive. Dustin reached out to grab the bottle back. You're shameless. Dakota gritted her teeth and wrote up a $10 million check before leaving angrily. She'd made up her mind to make Dustin pay after her mother recovered. After half an hour, she reached the hospital. As soon as she returned to the ward, she saw a group of doctors gathered there, shaking their heads and sighing. Her mother, Jane, was lying on the hospital bed, unable to move. You're back, Dakota. Florence rushed forward and asked, how did it go? Does he have the solution? If there's no other method, we'll have to seek out Drive. Cross. He gave me a bottle of pills and told me Mom would be fine after taking them for a month. Dakota pulled out the bottle and poured out an ordinary-looking black pill the size of a peanut that emitted a musty odor. This thing can heal her. Florence gaped in dismay. Instead of the panacea she had been expecting, all she saw was a booger. That's what he said. Dakota nodded her head. Ms. Nicholson, a bald doctor suddenly spoke. Your mother's life is in danger. The best choice right now would be to perform a craniotomy surgery, not listen to some voodoo doctor. You can't even figure out what's wrong with her, yet you want to perform a craniotomy. How's that different from murder? Dakota snapped. The doctors had previously told her that her mother might be paralyzed due to the tumor in her brain. However, the CT scan results came back clean, so how could she blindly believe their assumptions? All surgeries come with risks, but at least our professional team is more reliable than the doctor you found. The bald doctor promised. I have to try no matter what. Dakota's tone was firm. What an idiot. The bald doctor shook his head and looked at Dakota like she was a moron. Why would the world need doctors if medicine can cure everything? Exactly. I'll take a shit while doing a handstand if it works. Another doctor voiced. Ignoring him, Dakota grabbed the pill and put it into her mother's mouth. The pill melted instantly, and a gush of energy spread through Jane's limbs. A few seconds later, Jane began to cough, her face flushed. What the hell is this? It tastes atrocious. Jane sputtered and sat up to gargle using the cup of water beside her. You can move again, Mom. Dakota froze, then she lit up in excitement. Huh. Jane halted, swallowing the water she had just gargled, before springing up happily. Oh my. I can move again. Who said they'd take a shit while doing a handstand? Step forward right now. Dakota glared at the doctors, rendering them speechless. Chapter 296. The doctors looked at each other in shock after seeing how lively Jane was. They couldn't believe that such a small pill had cured what a group of medical professionals had been unable to. It was incredible. Was that black pill a panacea or something? Getting over his shock, the bald doctor tentatively asked, Ms. Nicholson, may I know what pill that is? Could we study it? Yeah, right. Fuck off. Dakota immediately kicked him, making the man groan in pain. Knowing he had lost, he quickly led the other doctors out of the room in disappointment. Who knew a small pill like this could be so powerful? Florence was in awe. Despite its looks and smell, its effects were evident. It may have cost $10 million, but it was worth it. Dakota exclaimed happily. What? 10 million? The other two women instantly sprung up. Are you joking? Dakota. A bottle like this costs $10 million. Florence asked, wide-eyed. Yeah. Were you tricked? How could this ordinary-looking medicine cost so much? Jane demanded, pained. The richer someone was, the stingier they were. Forget it. As long as it could save you, the price isn't that important. Dakota wasn't too angry about it. What do you mean forget about it? Jane fumed. I still haven't gotten even with that brat for slapping me. How dare he con us out of $10 million? I have to get that money back. She immediately tried to get out of bed, but her agitated state, combined with her weak body, made her knees go weak, and she immediately collapsed back on the bed. Mom, we can think about the money later. Your health is way more important, Dakota said worriedly. Don't worry, Jane. I'll get the money back for you. Florence volunteered, not letting the opportunity to prove herself escape. All right, then. I'll leave this to you. Jane agreed without hesitation. She couldn't be happier that someone was volunteering to run errands for her. Mom, bad news. Just then, Dahlia barged into the room anxiously. What's wrong? Florence was puzzled since she rarely saw her daughter so panicked. It's James. Dahlia panted before continuing. I just received news that he got drunk last night and accidentally ran his car into someone, killing that person. He's already been arrested. He killed someone. Florence was stunned. How is that possible? He never drives after drinking. How could this have happened? I don't know the specifics either. He's being held in police custody. Let's go now. Darla urged. Right. Let's go. Florence quickly followed Dahlia out of the room. Dahlia was the one who drove, and moments later, they arrived at the investigation bureau. After a simple registration, the two women entered the meeting room and saw a roughed-up James. Mom. Sis. You're finally here. James burst out crying the moment he saw them. You asshole. How dare you drink and drive? Dahlia walked forward and slapped him across the face. Chapter 297. Enough. Stop fighting. Let us know what happened first. Florence said worriedly. I'm not sure what happened either. James sobbed. I blacked out after drinking with my friends. By the time I woke up, I was already in the car, and there was wreckage everywhere. I was so scared I ran away immediately, but I got caught the same night. You did a hit and run. Do you know how severe this crime is? You won't be getting out without a decade or two of jail time. Dahlia spat. What? James immediately paled. I'm still young. I don't want to go to jail. Please save me. You have to pay the price for your mistakes. How can you think that you'll be safe after killing someone? Dahlia sighed. Although she loved her brother dearly, she could do nothing about his crime. Sis. Mom. Help me. I swear I'll never do this again. I've learned my lesson, I swear. James swore frantically. Unable to stand the thought of living out his life in prison. Calm down, James. I'll call you aunt right now. With the Glenstead Nicholson's help and some money, we should be able to get you out. Florence quickly drew out her phone and called Jane. Hello. Jane. James is in danger. He ran his car into somebody and killed them. Could you make a few calls to get him out? It's not that I don't want to help you, Florence, but Dahlia ran away from her date last night, so our family is very unhappy. They've given the order that unless Dahlia marries Mr. Longford, our family will not be providing any assistance, Jane responded calmly. What? Florence stiffened and turned to look at Dahlia questioningly. I'll never marry him. Dahlia immediately refused. Then forget about it. Deal with James on your own. Jane hung up. Just agree, Dahlia. What's wrong with marrying Mr. Langford? He's powerful and rich, and he comes from an aristocratic family. As long as you marry him, we can save your brother and live comfortably for the rest of our lives. Florence urged. Mom, I don't like him. Dahlia frowned. You'll fall in love with him after some time. Would you rather see your brother being sent to prison? Florence wailed. That's right, sis. Just marry Mr. Langford, or I'm doomed. James sobbed. Did the two of you ever think of my future? Dahlia was troubled. You'll have a wonderful life if you marry Mr. Langford, and our family will become powerful too. What's not to like about that? Besides, I'm your brother. Do you want to see me rot away in jail? James roared, his eyes bloodshot. Let me think about it. There must be another way. Dahlia shut her eyes helplessly. What's there to think about? We're running out of time. James shouted frantically. He's right. Won't you please help him? I'm begging you. Florence cried and fell to her knees. What are you doing, Mom? Get up. Dahlia paled and tried to help Florence stand. I won't get up until you agree, Florence declared. At the sight of her mother's firm attitude and her brother's terrified expression, Dahlia stood rooted dumbly, at a loss. She never thought that things would turn out this way. The happiness she'd been praying for was just a few steps ahead, so why was God treating her this way? Didn't she deserve happiness? Fine. I'll do it. Dahlia shut her eyes, tears spilling down her cheeks. She had given in. Chapter 298. Fine. I'll do it. Within an exclusive club, Rhys couldn't help grinning when he heard the other voice from the phone. Great. See you tonight. You better not stand me up again. With that, he hung up. The young men and women surrounding him immediately gave him a thumbs up after learning what had happened. Never thought a tiny trick like this could get that chick to obey you, Ms. Langford. You're incredible. A blonde man praised. Rhys chuckled evilly. She would never have agreed if I hadn't sent her brother in. Besides, how could I let a chick like her slip through my fingers like that? None of the women he set his sights on have ever gotten away from him. All it took was some time and some tricks. Dahlia may look like an innocent woman, but as long as he used her friends and family as bait, she would surely bite. I'm curious, Mr. Langford. Why would you marry her? You could have just had fun without getting married. This doesn't seem like something you'd do. The blonde man observed. Excellent question. Rhys paused to light a cigar. Truthfully, what I want is the Glenstead Nicholsons' support. Marriage between our families has been set, and Dahlia will soon carry out her family's orders. Through her, I will take over the Nicholsons' power completely. His words caused a stir among the crowd, and they immediately began singing his praises. As expected of Mr. Langford, he thinks so far ahead. How impressive. He has brains and brawn. He's amazing. Once I take over the Nicholsons, I will become the head of the Langfords. Rhys declared confidently. Competition between him and his brothers was fierce, as everyone wanted to become the head of the family. To win against them, he must have enough strength and power. Then let us wish you a happy marriage in advance. The blonde man led the group to offer Rhys a toast. Soon, laughter resonated through the room. 8 p.m. at Hillview Restaurant. Dustin had arrived earlier than the agreed time. He had chosen the most luxurious room they had to cater to him and Dahlia, which didn't matter much to him since this was one of his businesses, and he didn't have to pay. Sir, our chef prepared these dishes specially for you. Please let us know what you think. The manager, carrying a menu, began to introduce each dish to Dustin. No need for all this. You can arrange it as you see fit. Just make sure to get us the chef's signature dish. Dustin instructed. Of course, sir. The manager nodded and waved his hand to those outside the room. A group of waiters immediately began setting up the place with flowers, wine, candles, and more, making the room look romantic and warm. They had even hired a guitarist and 3 dancers to perform. Soon, everything was ready. Sir, I took the liberty to arrange some performers. I hope you don't mind. The manager said with a smile. This looks quite grand. You must have put in a lot of effort. Dustin was surprised. I can always tell them to leave if you don't wish them to be here. The manager lowered his head. It's fine. It's quite nice. Thank you. Dustin smiled. Dahlia would like this, wouldn't she? It's my pleasure to serve you, sir. May I know when Ms. Nicholson will be arriving so I can prepare things? The manager asked tentatively. She should be here soon. Dustin glanced at the time. It was already past 8. Dahlia always kept her promise and was never late. Did something happen? Puzzled, Dustin pulled out his phone to call her. Chapter 299. Dahlia didn't pick up the first 2 times. It wasn't until his 3rd attempt that the call got through. Hey, Dahlia. Didn't you tell me to treat you to dinner? Why aren't you here yet? Dustin asked. About that I'm sorry, but something came up. I might not be able to leave any time soon. Dahlia's voice sounded strange. It's all right. Work is more important. Take your time. I won't bother you. Dustin answered understandingly despite the tinge of regret. Dahlia hummed. I'll treat you another day. Sure. Dustin smiled. He was just about to hang up when he heard a familiar voice. Dahlia, who are you calling? Hurry up. You've got to drink with me. With a beep, the call ended. Sir, when is Ms. Nicholson arriving? The manager asked. She has something to deal with, so she can't come. You can put everything away. I'm sorry, everyone. Dustin smiled politely and got up to leave. Everyone exchanged confused glances. Why had the carefully planned dinner gone to waste? Meanwhile, inside a Barcarolle hotel room. Mr. Langford, I can't drink anymore. Let's stop here tonight. Dahlia waved her hands frantically as another glass of wine came towards her. Her face was flushed, and she was lightheaded, her body weak. It was quite hard to get your brother out of that mess. You can't be that ungrateful, can you? Louis held up his glass unhappily. Just drink it, Dahlia. It's just 1 glass. Florence, who was sitting beside them, urged. They were here because they wanted to save James, so they had to make sure they pleased Louis. But Dahlia hesitated, troubled. Knowing her limits, she was sure she'd collapse if she drank any more. I won't force you anymore, Dahlia. This is the last glass. Louis pushed the glass towards her once more. See, Dahlia. It's the last glass. You shouldn't embarrass him. Florence pressed softly. All right, I'll drink it. Taking a deep breath, Dahlia lifted the glass to her lips and downed the entire thing. As soon as the liquid settled, she felt herself getting dizzier. Her body swayed, and she almost tripped. With quick reflexes, Florence grabbed Dahlia to keep her still. Mr. Langford, Dahlia is drunk. Why don't I send her home? It's fine. I've already booked a presidential suite for the 2 of you. She can just rest here. Louis said with a smile. Won't that be too much trouble? Florence questioned tentatively. Of course not. We'll be a family soon. You should go and rest. Louis drew out a room card and passed it to Florence. Thank you, Mr. Langford. Florence nodded and helped Dahlia out of the room. Let's see how you're going to escape tonight. Louis cackled, seeing Dahlia's retreating figure. He lifted his glass and took a big gulp before following behind the 2 women. Chapter 300. Inside the presidential suite, Florence helped Dahlia onto the bed and took off the younger woman's shoes. She then went to grab a basin of warm water to wipe Dahlia down. Mom, I feel horrible. I want some water. Dahlia lay on the bed weakly, feeling parched. Water won't work. I'll get you some milk. Wait here. Florence made up an excuse and quickly left the room, bumping into Louis straight away. How's Dahlia doing? Mrs. Nicholson. She's fine. Nothing a night's sleep won't fix. Florence smiled. Where are you heading, Mrs. Nicholson? Louis asked again. To get Dahlia some milk to case her stomach ache. I see. Louis smiled knowingly. No one sells milk nearby, so I'm afraid you'll have to search further. You might have to come back later too. Are you sure? I'm pretty sure I saw a grocery store downstairs. Florence smiled awkwardly. Are you questioning me? Louis' smile slowly disappeared, an animalistic, cruel expression taking over. Oh, of course not. Got it. I'll come back later. Florence promised hurriedly, smiling apologetically. Good. Louis' smile returned, and he watched the woman leave. As soon as she was gone, he opened the room door and let himself in. How did you get the milk so quickly, Mom? Dahlia asked weakly from the bed. Your mother isn't coming back anytime soon, so I'll be taking care of you, Louise responded. Mr. Langford. What are you doing here? Dahlia's face tightened. How did you get in? Where's my mom? She went to get you some milk, of course, Louise answered, beginning to take his clothes off. What do you think you're doing? Mr. Langford. Dahlia began to panic. What do you think is supposed to happen when a man and a woman are left alone in a room? He sneered, removing his tie, eyes full of lust. Don't mess with me, Mr. Langford. I'm not that kind of person. Dahlia shouted. We'll be engaged in a few days and getting married soon, so what does it matter? Louise jeered. I promise you infinite luxury if you please me tonight. No. You're not touching me until we're married. Dahlia stood her ground. That'll take too long. You're going to sate me right now. He lunged forward and began yanking at her clothes like a beast. Go away. Struggling with all her might, Dahlia planted a firm kick at Louise's groin, and the man immediately doubled, groaning. Are you all right, Mr. Langford? Dahlia was startled. Things would be bad if she caused him permanent injury down there. You bitch. Furious, Louise slapped Dahlia across the face, making her stagger and fall to the floor. No woman has ever rejected me, much less kicked me. How dare you? Louise exploded. I'm sorry. Mr. Langford. I didn't do that on purpose. Dahlia shook her head. Shut the fuck up. If you don't want something to happen to your brother, you better kneel and beg for forgiveness. You're crossing the line, Mr. Langford. Dahlia snapped.